Right, take two. Apologies for the disruption to the live stream. We had a few technical issues because for some reason my antivirus decided to try and do something weird, and it completely buggered up the live stream. And it just froze for a couple of minutes. So we're back. The last question was: Are the Australians, the Kiwi, being beaten by the Kiwis 30-0 in the last Rugby Pacific uh, Nations Test series in the final game? Yeah, the Aussies didn't turn up for that one. The Kangaroos really didn't turn up. I've never seen an Australian side beaten so badly in a rugby league Test match. So yes, apologies for the stream going all funny. I've had to restart it again. But no, with the New Zealand, right, let's get rid of that. Go right. So yes, so with the Australians being beaten 30-0 by New Zealand in New Zealand, I mean, yeah, but they have been nilled before. They've lost games before. It happens. But no, the manner of the defeat, I was just they just gave up. They just weren't at the races. 47 missed tackles. I mean that just doesn't happen. You don't even get that in an NRL game by a team, or for the most part, missing 47 tackles. They were beaten up the middle. I don't know. I mean, it was stunning. But then I also question why New Zealand didn't do that in the World Cup last year. I do question why New Zealand didn't do that in the World Cup last year, why they didn't perform like that last year, why they didn't win the World Cup. But um, yeah, stunning result. It's a record-breaking defeat for the Aussies. But one thing that was very interesting, I was reading online, and a journalist went to both training camps. So after the previous game where Australia beat New Zealand, um, journalist from down under went to both training camps, and he noticed that New Zealanders were going at it really intense, um, and running into brick walls and really getting into each other and giving it a good crack and um, really thundering into tackles. The Aussies laid back, playing a couple of rounds of golf, a couple of light-hearted training sessions, days off in between Test matches, and they generally were just taking it easy. They thought they had the game won before they even take the field because they beat them reasonably easily in the Test before, and then they get thumped. So a lot of questions have to be asked of the Australian coaching setup with Mal Meninga and and his assistants and the senior players within that Australian side who have very high standards at club level. And yeah, it's just it's disappointing for the the fans who've spent the money. Like, but we on their day, New Zealand can blitz anyone. They are a fantastic side, really fantastic sides. They've got some great players. And now Michael Maguire is not also weighed down with head coaching roles at club level at the moment. He can put more focus into the test side. I think playing Nickel Klogstad at fullback rather than the centres and having Joe Manu in the centres, I think was that's something they didn't do at the World Cup. They played Nickel Klogstad in the centres rather than at fullback, which is his preferred position. So I think that I think works really well when you've got players playing in their strongest position, where they play week in week out for their club side, and the spine really stood up. The forward pack won the physical battle, and yeah, it was just I was surprised by just how poor the Aussies performed. Really poor. But a lot of questions have to be laid at Mal Meninga, and it is what it is. So there's that. obviously we had the first round of the FA Cup at the weekends. I felt it was refreshing watching live football without VAR becoming the talking point, because VAR has become a talking point yet again. And how long Howard Webb at the PGMOL, every time he has to keep fronting the media, there's got to be pressure on his job. There has to be. There has to be pressure on Howard Webb and the PGMOL, and his position, and how many more high profile mistakes and bad errors have to happen in games. Doesn't matter if it's the top of the table, bottom end of the table, mid table, later stages of the FA Cup and the League Cup. How many more high profile errors have to happen in games before we have to go, the system is not working? It's not being implemented right. Why does UEFA and the Champions League have a different system? Why does international football have a different system with the same basic principles? I mean, how much longer can these errors keep happening? So there's a lot of pressure, I think, for Howard Webb to deal with, but also the quality of refereeing, even at championship level and below, isn't great. There's been some howlers there. Now, I felt that the games that I watched in the FA Cup over the weekend were refereed pretty well. I think the referees allowed the games to flow as much as they could, considering you would have a league side against a non-league side in the three games that I watched. And so therefore standards of play and standards of refereeing and what isn't and isn't acceptable at various levels, and the style of play is obviously different as well. And I was fine with most 95% of the decisions made in the three games that I watched. Obviously, there's going to be controversial decisions. I think there was a moment in the Chesterfield Portsmouth game where, if that's a Premier League game, there's going to be a free kick there. So it's an interesting one, but no, overly, it was refreshing watching the referees have more confidence in themselves, because they haven't got this VAR making errors. The referees seemed more confident in decisions they were giving, and you could see giving power back to the on-field officials is a good thing. We're obviously having the debate in rugby union with the new TMO rules in regards to red and yellow cards for foul play and reaching a threshold. And the review system, and you can definitely see it's impacting how referees are refereeing the game that's been played. You can see it's having an impact on their decision making, how assertive they are in their decisions, and it's having an impact. It's the same with the review system in the NRL, where a captain's challenge can be brought in. Now, there's, and then you have the interpretation of that said official who is reviewing that captain's challenge in the bunker, with the on-field official, say, look, you've challenged it, it's gone for review, it's now out of my hands, it's in their hands. Yet that referee on the field is going to be the referee, regardless of how that decision turns out. He's going to be facing the brunt of either set of players who are not happy with the outcome of that review decision when it goes against their team. So it's all well and good having technology there and a review system there, but again, why does the Premier League have a different VAR system to the rest of the big leagues in Europe and UEFA and even FIFA? Why does the Premier League why have the Premier League voted for a different system and a different structured VAR system to the semi-automated that we have in the Euros and the World Cup, in both the men's and women's game? Why has the Premier League done this and gone down this path? And at some point, now I did a video on how I would fix VAR about a month ago, following Liverpool Spurs. Fast forward a month, we've now got Newcastle and Arsenal as the latest game. There's been several others that's had a high profile VAR foul up. Now, Arsenal have lost the game, Newcastle have won the game. Liverpool lost the game, Tottenham won the game. So there's still an outcome where it has impacted the result in some way, shape, or form. And how many more, as I say, how many more times can Howard Webb, front the media, give a press conference, give a statement before change has to happen? Is it him? Does he have to go? Or does the whole system, as it currently stands with the Premier League, have to be changed because we're going to see this issue in the FA Cup past the third round when the Premier League sides enter. We're going to see this rear its ugly head again. And then we're going to have the debate is like, well, why can't the Championship, League One, and League Two clubs, the Football League, have VAR? Now, the Football League has basically decided not to have VAR implemented in their structure below the Premier League because of cost. Because at the moment, the clubs pay for it, not the league, who make billions of pounds. No. The clubs have to pay for it. Now, Premier League clubs can afford it. Now, Luton had to upgrade their stadium for VAR to make their stadium VAR compliant. Yeah, that's another cost they've had to pay for a system that's not working. Plain and simple. So there's that. But no, when refereeing, changes and you have rule changes brought in, there's going to be some teething issues. Now, I'm a massive rugby league fan, so Super League and NRL and International Rugby League, and there's been a lot of rule changes over the last 3.5, 4 years. A lot of rule changes have come in, and we could argue too many, too fast. And they've constantly tweaked it. I think, and now with this net guard debate in ice hockey, which we were talking about before the stream decided to go, with the English Ice Hockey Association, which governs the leagues below the Elite League, saying it's going to be mandatory immediately. The Elite League now saying, next season we'll make it mandatory next season. At this point in time, we highly recommend players use this piece of safety equipment, but it's not compulsory. And then other leagues going, we're not going to mandate any changes at this time. Yeah, it's interesting. It's always going to spark debate. Any rule change in any sport is going to spark debate. I've seen Anthony Taylor has been demoted to the Championship. When it comes to individual referees and where they're allocated, I mean, there is a reason why we are struggling to recruit referees in professional sport. Doesn't matter what the sport is, there is a shortage of referees across the board in all sports. There is a chronic shortage, and what we've seen is at youth level and amateur level and grassroots level, the abuse they face, and they're not paid a lot. They're paid a crappy match fee by the local football association, the county FA or the FA. They're not paid a lot at lower levels. We're having the debate about, the issues surrounding the Liverpool Tottenham game, where those VAR officials were also, moonlighting in UAE part of the refereeing team in Dubai, because we have to look at they are professional now. Let's pay them a decent wage. Let's try and entice them to stay, because there's been rumours that Saudi Arabia, Saudi League, are coming with some big money and try and get officials to referee their league. I can't comment on Anthony Taylor being demoted to the Championship. That's a decision that's been taken by the PGMOL, the Premier League, and the Football League. They've obviously agreed to refereeing allocations, and Howard Webb, as the boss, he's going to have to give. I think Howard Webb's position's he's under a lot of spotlight, a lot of pressure, and the discussions about his position and his role are going to be raised with every VAR cock up, and we've seen one with the Newcastle Arsenal game. Now, is it on the same level as the Liverpool game? No, but it's still an error, and it's a clear error at that. Now, the thing is, the referees really don't want to be in the headlines. They don't want to be on the back or the front pages for whatever reason. But they're under more scrutiny now than they ever have been. And I also think their confidence in themselves has been shaken because of the ongoing debate about goal line tech and VAR and all this and all the foul ups that this new system has. And what was very noticeable about the games that I watched in the FA Cup over the weekend was the referees had confidence in their decisions. The referees had confidence in backing themselves. And if they make a mistake, they make a mistake. The replay will show that, but it, they've still got to be confident enough to go, right, that is a free kick, that is offside, that is a goal, that isn't a goal, that's a handball. They've got to be confident enough to go with, with confidence into making decisions. Because if you take away that confidence, they're going to make more mistakes. So clearly, there is an issue of confidence within the refereeing group in the Premier League. There is so much money on the line. There is so much money on the line. This the spotlight on them and the pressure on them has gone up tenfold in the last few years. Um, but look, when you get told you're not refereeing in the Premier League for a week, 2 weeks, you're going down to the league below. That's got to be a bit of a punch in the guts. Has to be. You're not reffing, Man City, Arsenal. You're now refereeing, let's think, two championship clubs. Um, you're now refereeing Preston North End Blackburn, which is actually quite a tasty fixture, but you're not getting on big TV. They should be paid better. I'm not saying they should get paid the Mbappe type way, but it should be more to avoid corruption and careless mistakes. I think we also need to look at how the rules or the laws of the game are currently worded, how they're interpreted, and look at a variety of issues, including pay and training. Absolutely, we need to be discussing this. This is a discussion point that's been brought up before. Is they are paid better now than they have been. They are all fully professional. They have to go through fitness. They have to have. They've now got personal trainers. They've got coaches to keep their fitness up. It is interesting, how the game has changed and how refereeing has changed. And it's the same with rugby league. It's the same with rugby union. The referees now are pretty much all professional. They're professional in the NHL. They're professional in the NRL. All these various sports, the referees are now fully paid, fully professional, paid for by the league. The league pays them, and the governing body pays them salaries. And this has all happened in the modern era, the last 30 or so years. Top level officials are now fully professional, paid for by a governing body or the league they are refereeing in. Doesn't matter what the sport is. Football is no exception. No exception. The referees have to basically have the fitness to run for 90 minutes to an hour, 2 hours if there's extra time. Yeah, I do think that has to be considered as a change. I mean that's been called for a long. That would definitely sort out a lot of the dissent that players give officials with the constant surrounding the referee and giving the referee a gobful. And what you find in league and union is the referee feels that there's too many players coming up to him who aren't a captain or a vice captain. He will say to them, right, I'm only talking to you. You are the captain on the field at the moment because let's say the captain's off on an interchange or it's going for an HIA. You're the vice captain. You're now currently captain on the field. I'm dealing with you, not these guys. If these guys keep coming up, guess what? The decision that I've given to you, be it a penalty or a free kick, is getting reversed. They do it in both codes. I've seen players get lengthy suspensions for abuse of officials. So, real bad back chat, dissent. Football really needs to start laying down the law in this area. The fact is, the referees write a post-match report of every game. They write up a report. And they submit that report to the Premier League and the FA and all the Championship, whatever level they submit their report. So, this is what I saw in the game. This is the bookings, free kicks. This is how the game went. I booked this player for a late tackle. This player for dissent. It does disappoint me when the players crowd around the officials and start with the dissent, the back chat. It does disappoint me. It does. And this is where we are now having this problem where young kids are watching this. Let's say, let's say cool, Champions League game or a big FA Cup game, Premier League, whatever live football it is. It's a derby match. Let's say it's Liverpool Man City, or it's let's say Sunderland get Newcastle in the FA Cup. That's going to be a tasty fixture, for example. Doesn't matter. I'm just using certain matches as an example. And they see all the players. These are young kids watching. They see all the players crowd around the referee, you know, constantly criticising every decision, just really getting in his face, giving the ref a load of f bombs, whatever it may be. Don't know what country when it could be an Inter AC Milan derby or a Lazio Roma. It doesn't matter. Choosing them as examples. El Clasico is another one. They're really giving it to the referee, crowding around. Kids see that and do it at youth level. And as they grow up, they've seen it's acceptable. They start playing grassroots, amateur level, semi-pro. They continue to do it because they're not being adequately punished for basically abuse of an official. Um, you know, and it's in the rule book to say dissent is a booking. Now, I don't see like all 11 players get booked, but even though in Rugby World Cup, it's gone the All Blacks filed a complaint against Wayne Barnes. Yeah, the All Blacks don't like losing. The All Blacks like a win because they think they're entitled to every World Cup they play in, which is why they've won the second most World Cups. Look, the All Blacks, yeah, look, that they complained in 2007 after they lost the quarterfinal because they weren't the best team on the field. They were beaten by the French quite well. Wayne Barnes, I mean, he's now retired from international and rugby union refereeing completely, but he did state that throughout his career, especially in the social media era, so the last 10, 15 years, the abuse officials are getting. You're thinking this is rugby union, this is going to be the gentleman's sport, right? Where gentlemen play a thugs game, right? The abuse that referees are getting at all levels of the game in rugby union is now reaching a point. So, look, Sam Kate, I mean, I don't think there's a disagreement with that. The fact he had to go to a TMO review system is laughable. That should be a red on the field straight away. That should be an instant red anyway, regardless if he's got just mistimed it or he's deliberately intended to like try and kill Jesse Krill. And I'm going for the latter because he did have time to adjust himself. He's gone in for the big hit. He knows he's going at head height. He knows he's going to clock him one. Regardless, why that was only given as meeting the yellow card threshold. He's drilled the guy in the head with force, made no attempt to lower his tackle height. The opposition player hasn't dipped his height. He was already at that height going into the challenge. He's had a good couple of seconds lining him up. Yeah, no. You can't say he's got his technique wrong or he's slightly been wrong-footed or mistimed it. He has drilled him. He has gone in with intent to leave a hit on because Peter Skeppy-Toy has been destroying them. And as the opposition back row, you've got to put a number down. The problem I have is this new system they brought in rugby union with this TMI review system. You know, I I'm just not comfortable with taking some powers away because I work with a couple of rugby players who play at the local rugby clubs or have played and I played as well, and we constantly have this debate about the new system. And yeah, I think it makes the referees less confident in themselves. To have that backup obviously is a good fail safe just in case. Hey, like, you've missed something here. Well, let's review it. You've missed something. Or if you're unsure, I think I might have seen some foul play. Can you review this phase of play? I think the way it's been implemented is reactionary in the sense that World Rugby is terrified of a CTE lawsuit or a player welfare lawsuit because there are We've seen a couple of cannonball tackles in the World Cup, which is more of a rugby league issue, but it's also a union issue as well. We've seen some illegal neck rolls, so we've seen some neck injuries. Um, so World Rugby, formerly called the International Rugby Board, the IRB, back in the day, until they decided to rebrand for some reason. Don't know why. They are, you know, they are clearly fearful of a massive you know, massive litigation because multiple ex-players have joined several class action lawsuits against a rugby union. It's the same with the AFL. The AFL is terrified of massive litigation that could be worth billions of Australian dollars because of ex-players who've got debilitating injuries, who've had concussions, who've got health issues, have joined a class action lawsuit against the AFL in Aussie rules in Australia. Now, while the AFL is a very wealthy league by professional sporting standards, they are a very wealthy league. They're they are a big league domestically in Australia. TV viewership, corporate sponsorship, player base, fan base, all that kind of stuff. Um, when it comes to the standings of what teams are valued at, what the league revenues and expenditures and what the league is in financial standing, you look at the NFL. Doesn't even come close to the value of one NFL team what the AFL makes in revenue. Doesn't even come close. Doesn't even come close. The NRL is, I think, being more proactive in constantly updating the mandatory stand down periods, working with doctors and scientists to go, look, we're not going to get head contact out the game, but when there is a concussion, when the players are clearly concussed, let's look after them as best we can. See that. But there are still people within sports governance who are denying causal link between repeat concussions and CTE. Repeat concussions and motor neurone disease, which has been proven that actually, if you have repeat concussions or head knocks, you are more likely to get like Rob Burrow, for example, and Doddy Weir, and used Van der Best Hazen, all have repeat concussions. 2 are dead, one's not got long left. It's not just the head knocks; it's all the other stuff as well. The post-retirement medical procedures players have to go through, all the operations, all the rehab, all the physio, all the other related health issues for playing contact team sports or just sport in general. Some sports, like rugby union, are terrified. So they come up with these reactionary rule changes, say, look, we're doing something, we're cracking down on it. And in reality, not only do you change the game that's been played far too much, you're putting off potential players playing. Because when they talk to, I want to start playing rugby, an existing player will go, don't bother, mate. It's become a shambles. It's not the same sport. It's not enjoyable. Too many changes. And a lot of rugby fans, I noticed this on social media. They weren't happy with a lot of the way the game is now being refereed, the standard of refereeing, and when you've got ex players and ex referees going, the sport has now become too technical. We're overcomplicating it with rule changes and rule variations and law variations. When you've got Nigel Owens saying that the game has now become too technical, it's changing too much. It's not the sport that he used to referee. When you've got a referee of that standing within the sport saying, we're getting this wrong, we're going down the wrong way in regards to this, it tells you something. When you have ex-players going, this is not the same sport, but getting this wrong, we need to have better dialogue. Yes, we need to look after ourselves better with mandatory stand-down periods and working with, getting dirty players out of the game, absolutely. But when this new TMO review system, that just doesn't make sense. And then you've got the new international calendar they're going to be bringing out, which adds further load to the players, more games. when doctors are saying, actually, these guys need to be playing a little bit less. We're putting their body through a lot of physical strain. So it's not just head knocks; it's general player welfare. It tells you something that World Rugby is definitely not under Bill Beaumont is not being governed particularly well. Um, so, and you can say the same for rugby league. When we're hearing terms like load management, oh, obviously coaching staffs need to be aware. Okay, I might need to rest this player a little bit. Obviously, players want to play every available game. They want to, play as many games as possible, maximise their earning revenue, maximise their bonuses for hitting certain thresholds. But sometimes I think even coaches are putting players at risk by overplaying them and trying to rush players back into the lineup before they're fully fit. And don't get me wrong, some rugby players and rugby league players and ice hockey players, they are true warriors. They are going out there when they're only 65, 70% fit and trying to play a full game. And fair play to them. Like Eric Carlson was playing in the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs on one leg. Joey Johns, I think, played a grand final with a potential punctured lung in the NRL. So we're talking about some great players who have played in their particular sports, in their particular disciplines, going through that pain barrier. But, I mean, some of the injuries that they play through are ridiculous. And then, is it when they're in their 40s, 50s, and into their 60s, and they are struggling with not just concussion-related illnesses, but their legs are completely shot, their backs, their shoulders, they're on crutches, that they need to have, they've got rheumatoid arthritis, they've got to have multiple operations to fix old operations, they've had knee replacements. It costs money. And unfortunately, the leagues and the team owners are being they're finding ways not to pay players medical funds. The NRL CBA debate and the NRLPA basically threatened to go on strike was again about post-player welfare and what former players are entitled to. You've got to meet a threshold of games played. You have to have played a minimum number of games before you can get the medical care or medical support or training to find a new career post-retirement. You've got to reach a certain threshold. And that is the league basically trying to be cheap. Every professional sports league does it. They try and cheap out. Once the players are no longer valuable to them by making them money by what they do on the field as an asset, they don't care. They don't care. And professional sport is different to any other industry. Rugby is not a sport where player safety risk is high. Yeah, I mean, I think all contact team sports. It doesn't matter if it's association football, rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey, Aussie rules, NFL and CFL, American football. What we've seen, especially with the CTE lawsuits and all that, is the NFL, for example, is trying to get by paying ex-players the minimum amount of money. They will find a loophole in their own rules to pay them as little as possible. Like, honestly, as soon as they're retired, they've got to meet certain thresholds for games played, seasons played, all this. They put in all these things in the way to prevent basically a former employee getting full pension rights, basically. That's basically what they're doing. They're cheaping out on the ex-players who've got sometimes debilitating health problems because of the sport they played and loved playing. Don't get me wrong, I think you're supposed to love playing the sport. Insert league and sport here. But leagues are trying to get around with CBAs and coming up with these new agreements. Honestly, the amount of story, and this is what really angers me, is these leagues make billions of dollars, billions of pounds, billions of euros, whatever. Insert current, they're making money hand over fist at a time when other industries and people are struggling to get by. They've got all this money, and when we hear about players are paid too much, it's like only a handful of players actually really earning stupid sums. If you're talking to like a League Two football player, they're not making Ronaldo money. Let's be honest. They'll be lucky to make what Ronaldo makes in a week in their entire career, for example. Yeah, a lot of them end up in the CFL, which means they're not getting paid a lot of money. The highest paid salary in the CFL is like 1.7 million Canadian dollars, which equivalates to about 1.3 US, I think. They're not making massive amounts of money in the CFL if they don't make the NFL. Yeah, so again, student athletes, collegiate athletes, um, they're, yeah, the NCAA is an absolute joke. Um, but no, I have a lot of sympathy for ex players who are not being looked after by the leagues they played in. And it also doesn't help when you've got pretty toothless player unions, really, player associations, depending on the league and the sport we're talking about. I honestly think while we do have things like the NHLPA and the NFLPA and the Professional Football Players Association, the PFA, they are pretty toothless. Let's be honest. I mean, when's the last time that the PFA said, you know what, we need better post-retirement care for our members? When was the last time they came out and said we're not happy with when players are retired from the game, and they decided to move away from football, be it coaching or media work, football activities, and they go into the real world, how they've been looked after? We don't hear anything. But during COVID, when obviously the game is thinking, Christ, we may not have a league to come back to, the PFA told, and this was a real own goal by the PFA, told its members not to take pay cuts or wage deferrals, refused them, which I thought was ridiculous. I thought that was really out of touch with what the rest of society was going through. That was a real bad PR move, but I haven't forgotten it. And then you got, we can circle back to this and keep having this debate. So when we're talking about what happened to Adam Johnson for the Nottingham Panthers and the net guard debate, we're trying to have in the previous live stream that went, and a national governing body or a governing body of a series of leagues in the country, because the English Ice Hockey Association doesn't cover the whole of the UK, it only covers the National League and below, and junior development leagues, says it's going to be mandatory as of now. But the league above that comes under its own governing body, the Elite League, saying we're going to be mandatory next year, but for the next 6 to 8 months, it's recommended but not compulsory. What kind of this is where, are they really putting player welfare at the heart of things, or are they just like, we'll do it later? Quite, we'll do it later. That to me doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem right when you clearly had an unfortunate incident that's led to a fatality. That a league is like, yeah, we're gonna defer for 6 months before we change the rule. That just is mind blowing to me. And when the biggest league in your sport in the world is like, nah, we will, it's not compulsory for players, it's personal choice. Yeah, that to me is, you're not putting player welfare at the forefront of any decision making at all. Um, I think a lot of players, if the equipment was more comfortable to wear and they had more feedback on the equipment's design to make it more comfortable to wear, I think they would wear it. You say that, but the Elite League potentially is facing a lawsuit. The Sheffield Steelers are potentially facing a lawsuit, so surely, if you can prove that you are now improving safety, you can mitigate a lawsuit. Because at the end of the day, it's all about money. There's going to be someone somewhere trying to profit off this poor young man's passing. It's called litigation. It's called lawsuit. It's called suing. Now, someone somewhere, a lawyer probably, will make a lot of money out of any potential litigation. There's going to be legal consequences. And as I said, ice hockey is not a sport in the UK that can afford litigation. Even the AFL, one of the biggest leagues in Australia, if not the biggest league in Australia, depending on who you talk to, because the NRL will say that we're the bigger league, but the AFL, one of the biggest leagues in the Southern Hemisphere for revenue, that I do know for a fact. A major league cannot afford litigation when it comes to player welfare. It just can't. Now, I would say that as it's already a voluntary, non-compulsory piece of equipment anyway, that's player preference. That players are already wearing it. It is covered by the rules saying you can wear this piece of equipment. It is not a banned piece of equipment. It is totally legal. It's been around for many, many years as an optional extra piece of equipment that a player can wear. It'd be quite easy to go, yeah, we can make this compulsory. Players already wear it in the league. Not many, but some. And they face ridicule from other players. And fans are going, players soft. The Elite League is one of the tougher leagues to play because there's more fighting. There's more penalty minutes. It's a more brutal league. Maybe not as skilled as the NHL, maybe not as watched as the NHL. But if NHL fans who like, oh, fighting, I like fighting, I like the physicality, they would love the Elite League if it was given a lot more airtime. I've seen a lot of people going after Pet Brave after this incident with Johnson. I can't see him playing for Sheffield again. No, I can't see. From what I've gathered and what I've seen online, he and his family are receiving death threats. Um, the Sheffield Steelers are receiving a lot of threatening messages and hate. Now, I'm not a massive Sheffield fan. Whenever I've seen their affiliate team, the Steel Dogs play, they come across as quite a dirty team. Place I call it the Goon Squad. I did. Um, um, there's a lot of also Nottingham and Sheffield. The rivalry between those two cities in every sport, not just ice hockey, but every sport is quite intense rivalry anyway. Um, but no, I will mention the social media aspect of it. It's not been great. It's been an absolute circus. But this is why. Well, I will always call it Twitter. This is why I'm kind of glad I got rid of my Twitter account. An instant, not as severe as that, an instant would happen, be it in a game or an individual player or a coach or whoever it may be, something controversial happens. So slightly different to a tragic accident. Something controversial happens, and then you just look at you know the 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 responses, and you're thinking to yourself, this is madness. Like what has happened and this is where social media has given what I call idiots a voice, um, and and uh, and given idiots a platform because it is the least regulated thing in the world. There doesn't seem to be much consequence for sending some of the crap. It's not very well moderated. And what we've seen, and I think even YouTube at one point was cutting its human staff. What we've seen is these social media companies like Facebook, like Twitter, um, they've been relying more on the AI, the artificial intelligence, to pick up, content. They cut back on the human moderators. They cut back to maximize profit by getting rid of actual people. And then I will be doing a video between, looking at the relationship between sport and social media and how I think it is a toxic relationship. And while I'll have my views on that because I've seen it, it's an interesting one. I think what Petgrave has received on the receiving end of the social media side of things. I mean, look, we can debate whether he's a dirty player or cheap shot artist or he's the most penalised player in the league, and the stats would probably back that up. But he is quite penalised. He does get a lot of penalty minutes, a lot of fighting majors, whatever. The stats don't know about how he plays the game, but he in no way, deserves what he's receiving on social media at all. Um, Obviously, there is an ongoing investigation into what happened, um, and so therefore, got to be a bit careful with what is said. And unfortunately, there are a lot of morons on social media that may jeopardise any civil or criminal investigation. But then I look back at what happened to Mason Greenwood, the whole Mason Greenwood thing. That was just. While I think he got very, very lucky that the charges didn't get to court, that doesn't mean they can't reopen the case against him. But I do think Mason Greenwood got very, very lucky. However, had that potentially gone to court, that trial may have collapsed because of some of the comments posted on social media. The Paul Kent situation, the currently suspended NRL 360 presenter, his trial date is next month. Now, I was very, very careful how I did, the content when I was covering the few videos that I did by saying he's been accused of this. This has to get to court. We have to be careful. What we can't say he's definitely guilty. We can't just say, well, he's obviously clearly a grubby person. But he does seem to. But they have, that's got to run its course. Now I've been reading. There's been very little in the media about what's happening with Paul Kent, but I can't see him working for um, Fox League in Australia, or basically NRL 360. I can't see him continuing to um, to work for the Daily Telegraph in Australia. I can't see that happening because the circumstances of the charges he is facing. It's not. It wouldn't be a good look for the organisations he works for, considering they've been banging the drum saying domestic violence, all these people are scum. When he's been charged with a violent assault against his ex-partner, I mean, it just doesn't look right. But oh look, I mean, look, when you've got Sean Avery, who I think is the least likable person ever to have played the game, trying to be, judge and jury on this, people who played with him couldn't stand him. Not a very likable character. Um, Basically, an absolute bit of a tool. I don't take what Sean Avery says seriously. YouTubers, I couldn't care less. Oh, I'm a YouTuber. I must be right on this. Are you a lawyer? Are you an investigating police officer? Or are you a coroner? No, you're an airhead millennial, entitled middle class millennial who thinks they know everything about the world, but they couldn't even finish a full semester of university. That's my example of it. They haven't lived in the real world. No, when you've got Sean Avery coming out, I don't pay attention to what Sean Avery has to say because the guy is a piece of trash. He was not very well liked when he played the game. Not a lot of ex-players have anything to do with him at reunions or NA league functions or team functions. He's not. There's a reason why he was an outcast out of the game. Um, I think that could, but then with people saying this and claiming he should be charged, a lot of the people don't understand are mostly American. They don't understand the the English legal system is different to theirs. We have different charges, different things. Uh, it would be, if anything, it would be manslaughter with diminished responsibility because he didn't intend, for that to happen. If that is deemed the charge, that if the police were, charge an offence, it'd be charged with manslaughter. He can plead manslaughter with diminished responsibility, or that could be the outcome. Involuntary manslaughter is not a charge in the English legal system. It's an American one. It's an American thing. So it wouldn't be the first time an ice hockey player has been charged with an on ice incident has led to it. But as far as I'm aware, there's been nothing to come out of Sheffield in South Yorkshire. Nothing's come out of South Yorkshire police to state anything to the contrary. The police will obviously investigate any kind of incident where there is a fatality. If it doesn't matter what the incident is, it could be you died of natural causes and you've been found by someone. The police have to investigate. They will then, obviously, the coroner will get involved and the medical examiners, and they'll determine the cause of death. In this case, it was obviously trauma, trauma to the neck, which led to blood loss. So it was severe neck trauma. That would be the cause of death, obviously, but then they have to go through all the footage. They would have, obviously, they probably would have asked fans who were sat nearby, can you have some video footage, please? Although I haven't seen an appeal for video footage to be given to the police, so there is that. And so a lot of these Americans, especially, are just absolutely ignorant about a foreign country's legal system, but they get very shitty when you decide to criticise their legal system, but they want to, pass judgment on ours. It's called hypocrisy. I have deliberately avoided listening to some of these YouTubers and TikTokers who are going on about what happened because they don't have a frigging clue. This is what I think social media has given people is just brain dead people are allowed to voice, have a like they're given absolute idiots, morons, a platform to spout crap. Now, as I say, I've not seen the footage, so therefore I can't pass comment on said incident. However, the social media mess where there is a lot of ignorance. There is a lot of ignorance, not just about the incident, but about a legal system. A lot of ignorance, and a lot of people who were at the game go, yeah, "It's an accident." A lot of people who weren't at the game or watching with the ability of extra slow mo replays and YouTubers with grainy footage are saying, "Oh, it's deliberate." There is a kicking motion now. Whether he's obviously intended to try and trip him or whatever, he stuck his leg out. That's open for debate. If he said, "Yeah, no, I did intend to trip him or push out at him at a lower height," then that, yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've got to be very, very careful with the the direction of travel we're going in. Yeah, I think we do need to look at obviously the uh, how we improve the game. Absolutely. Um, I think the neck guard is a Kevlar neck guard. I think that is definitely absolutely correctly should be debated as a mandatory piece of equipment. That should not be a voluntary thing anymore. I think we're definitely at a stage now where they've brought in helmets, they've brought in visors. I'm surprised gum shields aren't compulsory, but some players like having no teeth and biting their tongue off, obviously. But it, it makes no sense not to improve the safety aspect. But there's a lot of comments on social media that come from pure ignorance that shows how ignorant a lot of people are of the legal system that we have in this country. And they refuse to accept that we've had so many near misses at the professional level over many years. This wasn't a one-off. We've had multiple incidents where this has been a thing, and we've got lucky in the past. Unfortunately, we weren't lucky this time, and I to me, it's a no-brainer that we just need to make the sport safer. Um, it's still a brutal sport. They're still going to drop the gloves. They're still going to fight next weekend, this weekend, tomorrow night, for example. There could be a game. They're still going to drop the gloves and throw some punches. They're still going to put the big hits in. They're still going to, you know, play a very brutal sport. But I do think it's had an effect on the players who were playing that night and across the league and across the sport. It's had a knock on impact. Um, well, yeah. Um, Speculation can be very, very dangerous. I am surprised. Well, look, the Nottingham Panthers have released a statement saying, but again, this is where social media is very unregulated, an incident happens. And I use the Mason Greenwood situation as an example, and the Paul Kent one as another one where they're obviously facing legal issues. But again, you know, there were some people passing judgment saying he's definitely guilty, he should never play again. And, you know, obviously he's now playing, Mason Greenwood's now at Getafe, you know, Paul Kent's obviously waiting, you know, legal proceedings. But we're in a very, very, yeah, dark, you know, grey area here. We're in a very, very grey area, and we need to be very, very careful about how we approach and deal with certain aspects. And yes, there could be, you know, stuff said that may, if you're there, for example, if they're trying to pull a jury together, because you need a 12-person jury for a criminal trial, if they were trying to get a jury ready for any legal proceedings, they could be swayed by what is on social media and what has been written and what has been discussed. And that is quite troubling. And right, I've just got to double check. Just got to double check. I've got uh, I've just got to do some paperwork later on because to do with my rent and my rental contract. The joys of trying to, you know, live. But no, yeah, we have to be very, very careful with, you know, what is, you know, happening with things in regards to the Adam Johnson incident. Absolutely, um, definitely have to be very, very careful. I've deliberately avoided making a video on it. I think I will do a video about the EIHL making neck guards compulsory from next season, from 2024. I will do a video in regards to their response. Other than that, I'm not passing comment on Petgrave. I can't comment on an incident I haven't seen the full footage of. But yeah, I mean, social media is just giving people the entitlement to talk crap, um, and it has impacted legal proceedings. Has um, and yeah, I'm glad I got rid of Twitter. I am very, very glad I got rid of Twitter. Obviously, it's called X now, but I am glad I got rid of Twitter in the end. I just found that platform. It was an absolute carnage on Twitter. It was not overly enjoyable to use the platform. I never really liked Twitter anyway. I don't even know I had it in the first place. But I wasn't overly a fan of it in the first place. But as time went on, you could see it was becoming more and more like the Wild West. It was not a pleasant environment to be on. Um, I found YouTube far more pleasant to produce content for, and I'll go through my comment section. There's very few idiots now. It's a far more pleasant process when you are filtering through comments and when you make content. There's still been a couple of idiots, but not on the level that I used to have back in, let's say, 2018, 2019. Not on the same level as 4 or 5 years ago. I think YouTube's done a lot. Admittedly, they've gone about getting to this point. They could have done the process better by getting to where we are now. But I think YouTube is a better place now than what it was before. The process to get here, however, has rubbed something the wrong way, and I'm not totally in agreement with how we got here, but we are here now. I think the process to get here could have been different. I think a lot more creators could have been making revenue, making a living off the platform, or earning money off the platform, me included. Um, in other news, should Ballon d'Or be scrapped after Messi won it again? It's become a total farce. I don't care who wins the Ballon d'Or. I think it's now more of a personality contest. I think he won it on the basis of what he did at the World Cup, if I'm honest. But it's more of a personality contest now rather than the best all-round player. And I do think we're playing in an age, the game is being played now in an age where the quality level is less than what it was 20 years ago. Messi does not win the Ballon d'Or 20 years ago. Messi is not as dominant if he's playing 20 years ago. Neither is Ronaldo. They're not. What we're seeing now is the game is completely changed. I think the quality we see, I think it's a lesser game now that we're watching than what it was 20 years ago. I think the best football was played in the late 90s to the, I'm going to say late 2000s. I think that's when football was at its best. Now, it's not the same game. Um, I've got, look, he's won the Ballon d'Or, fair play to him. That's what his peers have voted. He's been voted that. But nah, I'm struggling to see it. But it's like when we're discussing individual, like the Dally M Awards in the NRL, the Brownlow Medal, best and fairest in the AFL, for example, in Australia, or we're talking about what's the award where the Masterton Award? One of the NHL awards that they give out to players is voted for by the players. Is popularity contest. Snyder, Van Dijk, Lewandowski, and Haaland have all been robbed by Messi. And Ribery was robbed by. Oh, look, they're all. I mean, we're talking about some very, very good players who've been listed there, who in another generation potentially, yes, could have been Ballon d'Or winners. But it's, as I say, the sport is not the sport that I grew up watching. Um, it's not the same sport. I think we've had a couple of dominant players because the quality level is less than what it was 20 years ago. You know, a mid-table team 20 years ago had a couple of world-class players in it because the talent, there's too much money concentrated in a handful of clubs who have, ruined the balance of the game. I don't think with what we've seen with FIFA and UEFA and the various domestic corruption scandals within the sport, money's ruined it completely. It's not the sport it was. Average players, are getting paid stupid money. Um, the salaries are just obscene. Um, the transfer fees are obscene, and the managerial merry-go-round circus is obscene. The whole sport is not. It's not the same as what it was. Let's be honest. It's just not the same. Where the sport now is. I mean, crikey, if my dad was still alive, I don't think he would have believed. My dad passed away nearly 14 years ago. I think the most expensive player back then was around 30, maybe 40 million, 50 million. Was seen as the most expensive player. I'll have to check who the most expensive player was in 2009. The transfer fee paid. I think it was Ibrahimovic or Ronaldinho. One of those two. And now you look at the transfer fees now for a really bang average. It's just, no. Neymar's transfer fee was ridiculous. Absolutely. How does Martinez win the Yashin Award yet Bonu finishes higher in the Ballon d'Or ratings? Would it be that one? Because the Yashin or Golden Glove, I don't know how they work it out. I don't know. I honestly don't know how it's popularity contests. Yeah, that's the only way I can think of it is popularity contest, or the club you play for, or the national team you play for, rather than the ability of the player. Hello, mate. Love to see you streaming again. Did you see the Norwich City mental health awareness? Yes, I did. I did see that. It is mental health awareness. It's Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. That was a bit of a mouthful. Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Say it again. Yeah, I did see it. And as someone who has lost a couple of mates, say mental health, just recently. Lost one last year. I lost a couple of mates last year, but one of them, sadly, mental health. demons got the better of him. Um, yeah, as someone who's lost a couple of mates, yeah, that way that it, yeah, it's difficult to talk about. I think sport can be a good way, and this is a good positive social cause in the sense of how they can go about it and say, look, professional sport, most of our fans are men, most of our participants are men. The majority of people need to see this message. Um, but no, men's mental health awareness month, it's not getting talked about really, and the mainstream media is part of that. And I think sport can be part of that conversation. And what I find interesting is when I do sport and mental health and sport and addiction, I cover these topics where we discuss high profile. Um, when we talk about like high profile players who've had issues with addiction, so drugs, alcohol, gambling. When we're discussing that, like I look at um, some of the comments left, and it's just Wayne Rooney's opened up about his battles with alcohol, and he's getting a lot of crap at the moment for obviously his manager. He gets a lot of crap on social media. Now we can debate. Wayne Rooney's obviously had some off-field issues with his marriage and his personal life. I have a lot of sympathy for him because he's basically from the age of 16 till now he's been in the public eye. He cannot get away from it for 2 decades, 22 years. He's lived with tabloid newspapers camping outside his house, to sports journalists chasing him down the street. He it's going to have an impact, and his way of dealing with it was drinking and getting on the bevies. I can't blame him. Um, it's men's mental health awareness month, not mental health. It's men's mental health awareness month. Put it out there. But no, Wayne Rooney. I mean, he's gone on a podcast. I think it's the Rob Borrow podcast, and yeah, that's just stunning. Absolutely stunning that. Oh yeah, I mean, I've done videos discussing it, and you know, the feedback I had back in January was fantastic. I have to admit, it was fantastic, and the feedback I got with my ADHD video was fantastic as well. Um, really positive feedback. Um, I didn't do it for me; I did it for other people. And beginning of the year, I was in a dark place, and last week I was in a dark place, but the other week I was in a dark place. I was, and you know, I was doing it more for others' benefit. Um, and I think sport is a good conduit to raise these issues. Um, it really is. But at the same time, professional sport has to face up to some of the issues that are going on within I mean, it's there are things happening within professional sport that shouldn't happen, and there's things that they can take a lead on because of their position in a community, especially with a lot of men. The biggest killer of men under the age of 45 is suicide. There, I said the word I didn't want to say. The biggest killer of men between the ages of 18 and 45 is suicide. Gary Speed, I think, is the example I'm going to use. Mic drop, Gary Speed. I was fortunate enough to see Gary Speed play, and thoroughly enjoyed watching Gary Speed play. He was a fantastic player, pretty decent manager as well, but he was a fantastic player. But I've seen other, players in other sports as well who have taken their lives. I've been fortunate enough to see Wade Belak play, ice hockey player who took his life about a decade ago. I was fortunate enough to see him play in the mid 2000s here in the UK. Rick Ripon is the famous one. Derek Bluegard was an accidental overdose, but Rick Ripon is the one that started the conversation, and then Wade Belak was shortly thereafter. But Rick Ripon was the one that stunned the NHL, and then Wade Belak was, I think, within a few weeks, and that gets conversation going. Um, so yeah, I think sport can definitely be more proactive in discussing social issues. There are some other social issues that I think sport has got the conversation wrong with how it approaches it, but it has been right to raise a social issue. Unfortunately, where sport lets itself down is when they're saying, we're all for women's rights, minority rights, gay rights, and then people like Jordan Henderson who say they're supporting these things go off and take the Saudi money, and then end up doing some adverts for the Saudi Tourism Board. It doesn't look good, and he should, face some criticism for his leaving Liverpool and signing in Saudi Arabia. He has to take that criticism. And when people go, "Oh, why?" When his contemporaries are going, "He shouldn't be getting criticised for this. This is unfair." No, it's totally justified. You cannot say you stand for LGBTQ and women's rights and race relations when you then take Saudi money. You cannot say. Look, same with golf. Same with boxing, UFC, any major sport. They're going to Saudi, yet they're saying they're all for equality and inclusion, all BS. They claim they are, yet they're happy to take blood money from a regime that denies rights to a large amount of its citizens for a variety of reasons. It's hypocrisy at its finest. And Jordan Henderson, Stephen Gerrard, for example, I think rightly deserve to be criticised and called out for their hypocrisy. And it's yeah. Was it a golf tournament? It might have been boxing. There was several high-profile boxing events and there was a WWE had been there. And I'm surprised WWE have been to Saudi Arabia because they've got a women's division and the women aren't really modestly dressed. I know WWE and boxing have been there. Got the F1. The golf has been there. And of course, then I'll get the 2030 World Cup. So there goes sporting integrity out the window. You can just buy it. I can't comment on every sport, but yeah, Jordan Henderson when he signed for whatever club in Saudi, that just was like, oh god, he could have just signed for a championship club or a club on continental Europe and just wound down his career at the top level or secondary level. Decent professional. Well, he could have re-signed for his home club Sunderland and everyone had gone, that's a legendary move. Well played, Jordan Henderson. You've done a really good thing there. You've signed for on a free at your boyhood club. That's fantastic. He decided to line his pockets and be a hypocrite. So I'm going to rightly criticise Jordan Henderson. I'm sorry. You cannot say that you stand for LGBTQ rights. And you can't say that you stand for equality for women, and then within a handful of weeks after being on that platform saying, yes, I think you deserve equal rights, and then you sign in a country who's for a team who is owned by the state, whereby if you are a woman or homosexual, you don't have the same rights as a heterosexual straight male. Yeah, yeah, you can't get certain employment rights. You go to jail. You get stoned to death in the public square. Yeah, no, you cannot get upset when you get criticised and throw your toys out the pram. I'm sorry, Jordan Henderson, Stephen Gerrard, all the others who've gone there. No, sorry, I think they deserve to be criticised fairly. some of the stuff that's getting sent to them is pretty diabolical, but I think they do deserve to be criticised, especially by the main. This is with the mainstream media. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, there was an agenda against Qatar." Well, yeah, the human rights record. There you go. Putting it out there. FIFA have clearly shown that human rights and the environment doesn't bother them at all. At all. In some of the upcoming World Cups, they've shown that human rights and the environment. As long as we make money. Um, so Infantino, I think, is even worse than Sepp Blatter ever was, because he's rubbing shoulders with some pretty brutal dictators in order to get them to host footballing events. And the term sports washing has been used, but I would argue that it's blood money. And FIFA has now shown its hand, where again, as I say, human rights and the environment are a secondary concern. And the Saudi Arabians want to play the World Cup in the height of summer. Qatar said, and Qatar, bear in mind, is basically run by coastline. Yeah, we all know, and apparently it's a propaganda agenda and blah 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 blah, blah, but no, it's true. But look, I think you know there are other countries that I think should host the World Cup before Saudi Arabia ever gets close. We all thought that after Qatar we would never go back to the desert ever again. It would never happen ever again. No, it's happened again because Infantino wants the money. Very suspicious that a not-for-profit organisation is chasing money. Um, but I do think it does raise a lot of questions about the whole process of how FIFA is governed and how the sport is governed at the elite level. To me, that just doesn't sit well with. It's not sitting well with me. I don't get me wrong. Look, if I'm still doing you, if this guy like YouTube starts making me loads of money and I can stop being a bin man and I can keep making content for you guys and it actually makes me a decent bit of revenue and I can actually earn a living off the platform, then absolutely, I will still cover the football. I'm not going to cover the Football World Cup, if that makes sense. But I do have concerns with direction FIFA is taking the sport at a global level. Yeah, that's just a little. But we were going to bid for a World Cup, and Turkey pulled out. The reason why we got Euro 2028 is because Turkey didn't want to continue the bidding process because Turkey's got issues. The whole east of the country has just been flattened by an earthquake, and they've got over 3 million Syrian refugees living in Turkey. So, you know, how am I doing? I'm surviving. Surviving. I won't be online much longer because I've got to sort out my rental contract because I've extended my lease by another 12 months from February, and I've got to do all the paperwork before Christmas, and I've got to do it actually within the next couple of days. I've got to do it tonight, really, but can't be bothered. But I've got it. Oh, the 2030. Yeah, look, I've seen a lot of commentary about that from mainstream media and on social media, including YouTube, and yeah, again, that's FIFA doing it in such a way because Morocco wanted it has bid for every World Cup since 2002, and they've wanted to get a World Cup for a long time. Even with a joint group with Spain was considered at one point. Obviously, Uruguay, it's the centenary edition, 100 years, right? The 100-year edition, 100 years since the first World Cup. Uruguay obviously won that first World Cup and hosted. And obviously, Argentina and Paraguay also played at that World Cup, and I think it should go back to Saturn. But of course, Brazil, I think it's every 16 years we're allowed to go back to a previous continent. People, only 16 years. You have a gap of 16 years before you can go back to the continent that's just hosted a tournament. So well, that's current FIFA rules now. They've changed their rules on who gets what. So Uruguay doesn't have the infrastructure. Argentina doesn't have the money. Paraguay has neither, because Paraguay is not a wealthy South American. Paraguay, they're very well educated, but it's as a population, but they're not a very wealthy South American country, heavily reliant on agriculture and transportation as transportation links to the others. Argentina doesn't have the public funds. Uruguay is too small a nation to host. Smallest one is French Guiana is the smallest territory. Suriname is the smallest country in South America. There you go. I've done my bit of geography. Suriname is the smallest independent nation. The smallest territory in South America is French Guiana, north of Brazil. So Uruguay doesn't have the population or the infrastructure, but it's doing quite well economically. Argentina's got the infrastructure and the population doesn't have the money, and Paraguay has neither. So they've given three countries that would never want to spend money because they don't have it. Obviously, Spain and Morocco. Spain have got a great track record in hosting events. Not with the expanded format. It would have to co-host with Argentina or Brazil, but Brazil have only recently had a World Cup that became a financial disaster for the country. They're still technically a French colony. They're a French colony. They're not an independent state. No geography questions for the other channel, which I still have got to do small content for. So shush. In regards to the Six Nation thing, I mean that just smacks of we don't care about the environment. All these. What is the be a 48 team format? The first the first three games or something get played in Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay, and all the rest take place in Morocco and then in Spain and Portugal. That's the theory, but look, I mean that's got 6.5 years away. Yeah, I have another channel. I have the history button. 48 teams. Well, I think this is the problem. This is where FIFA have just completely. The whole reason why we got a Six Nation World Cup is to allow Saudi Arabia to get the 2034 World Cup. And Paraguay doesn't even get mentioned in that rant. Paraguay is just all of the above. I wouldn't say Argentina is poor. It's a very well developed economy. It's just got no public money. There's no spare money, and the currency, the Argentinian peso, fluctuates wildly, and they have a banking system that crashes every 5 to 10 years, where all the Argentinians will queue outside their banks for about an hour, and then they go, right, we're going to go to the local cafe, take off tables and chairs, and then smash up the bank, and then we'll set fire to the bank, and then we'll set fire to Buenos Aires and Rosario and Salta and all the big cities, and just have a riot. But they really this is the problem. FIFA have basically made a shambles out of the 2030 World Cup to give Saudi Arabia the 2034 World Cup, the World Cup that no one wants. Australia were given a deadline, or all nations were given a deadline to bid by. Australia pulled out 6 hours before the deadline was going to hit. Yeah, Argentina's inflation is ridiculous, absolutely shambolic. We're talking, what, 30-40% inflation is an average. That's a good year. Yeah, the Argentinian They've had to revalue their currency so many times. It's ridiculous. They've had so many currency. Their currency is like the old Italian lira, just go up and down, you know, within a day. And in the morning you're a millionaire, in the afternoon you're bankrupt. It's yeah. Well, like as I think about it, you look at it, and FIFA have expanded the World Cup to 48 teams, and we all know that 32 was a decent number. Some people weren't happy with 32. Would like to see it, but we're now getting to the point where you know 1/6 of the world qualifies. What, Saudi Arabia? Surprising for a country with an ultra conservative religious government. Want to be what, an acro capitalist? Yeah, it's called a dictatorship. Most dictatorships will have, like communism. They were all corrupt. National socialism and fascism and nationalism. They were all corrupt. They yeah. Um, Oman is more traditional Arab country. I think has oil, but it's a lot more traditional, less modern. No, Oman is probably the safest Gulf state, the one that's the most relaxed, the most welcoming. I've got friends who, my friend's dad did security work in Oman, and he goes, it's not anywhere near as repressive as the rest of them. It's a more open, tolerant society in Oman. It's still got strict rules on dress code and respectfulness in public and all this. But um, Oman apparently is less intense, and it's definitely more relaxed way of life because Oman. I'm uh, North and South Pole FIFA Championship, but not Argentina. No, it's not Saudi. Well, Argentina um, is a mess. Lovely country, lovely people, but the economy's a mess, and this is why I mean, they're only hosting the one game, but Argentina is a fantastic country, fantastic people, but the politics and the economy is an absolute shambles. You know, and there is a definite right wing ultra nationalist element, and there's a very hard left wing, nearly Marxist element to their politics. Um, Well, the boundaries are the Caucasus and the Ural Mountains. There you go. There's your boundaries. The Ural Mountains and the Caucasus. So places like Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Armenia in the Caucasus, and the Ural Mountains, which divides European Russia from Asiatic Russia. There's your boundaries for Europe. So, in my opinion, Israel should not participate in UEFA sanctioned tournaments, but they have to politically. Um, what is it? See, what, the 2042 World Cup, Fiji versus Tajikistan in Baghdad, Iraq, with a car bomb during the national anthems. No, that would never happen. Because they're going in 2034 to Saudi Arabia, unless FIFA change their rules again when it comes to hosting rights, it won't happen. Um, yeah, so basically, Argentina is basically, there is no centrists in Argentina. You've either got ultra right wing or ultra left wing. So you're either basically neo Nazis or you're Marxists. Um, um, if you're in the middle, you will not get votes. You will. It's Argentina is just. I'm surprised it's not gone into civil war. To be brutally honest, Argentina's had a lot of right-wing military dictatorships. It's also had some left-wing military dictatorships. So Argentina is democracy in Argentina is a fragile thing. Let's say that. Although we've had democracy in Argentina since 1983, so 40 years of democracy in the country since the last military junta fell. Um, Juan Perón, so Evita, the film Evita. Juan Perón was her husband. He was a military dictator in the 40s and 50s. So Peronism is a term where it's basically like Franco's Spain in a sense. And then you had the military dictatorship during the 70s and the 80s that followed on from Peron, and that's when the Dirty War happened and the Argentinian 1978 World Cup in the Falklands. That's a period that's called the Dirty War, where Chile, Argentina, and Brazil and Uruguay were all under military dictatorships, where they were basically murdering trade unionists and journalists and all sorts. Celtic and Rangers can't compete in the Champions League anymore. Scottish football's a mess, really, isn't it? Very uncompetitive in Europe, but it does show how imbalanced the UEFA coefficient is, how imbalanced the TV deals are, and how imbalanced, where clubs sit. Because, yeah, I mean, there was a player playing at the weekend who was a Celtic youngster who's now playing in League One. So it shows you the level of player development and where we're at in regards to the quality that the Scottish north of the border is compared to south of the border with what's been played. We're talking League One standard. If a good young talented player, Dembele, I think, I can't remember which side he was playing, which team he was playing for on the weekend. I'm going to have to check my notes. But he created a fantastic goal. And he looked really bright and energetic. I think he was Blackpool, playing for Blackpool, I think. Was it Blackpool? Was it Blackpool? Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was Blackpool, I think. He was, playing for Blackpool and really energetic, really good movement. He was all over the pitch. He was the best player on the field, and he was like 18, 19 years old. Welcome to the 2050 World Cup, the best 180 teams in the world. Seriously, World Cup will go to 64 eventually. Balkans split up more countries. I don't know. I mean, there's got to be a point where we have to go, right, enough is enough. We're not going past this. We are not going past this point. But I just don't know. I mean, the fact that Infantino is been in charge when they have expanded to 48, and there have been those going, this is not. There's been a lot of countries saying actually it devalues the qualifying tournaments. We haven't got the debt. You know, and that's put off a lot of countries from potentially bidding for the tournament because of the added infrastructure costs. They've got to now find a partner to bid with, to put forward a proposal. Say, look, we're going to be a co-host, which is US, Canada, and Mexico. We've only had co-hosts once before. So I do think we're now reaching a point where countries are going to get put off, bidding to host. The fact that Australia basically realised they were going to give it to Saudi Arabia, regardless if they put a decent bid in or not. And Australia's got the sporting infrastructure; it doesn't have to completely build new stadiums and new cities just to house workers. For the Euros, it was a flawed format when it was, at the World Cup, the football. It's going to be a flawed format in the Rugby Union when they expand their World Cup, which they're doing at the next Rugby World Cup in Australia. They're expanding, so it's not just football that has issues when it comes to major international tournaments and getting the group stages or the round robins, as the Americans call it, but the group stage or the pool stages, if you want to talk about rugby union, right when it comes to who qualifies for the knockout stages, who doesn't, and how many teams play in a tournament. Because rugby union is changing its pool stage format by reducing the size of groups but adding two extra and going to the 2014 format, much like the Euros have. And there is that debate going, yeah, but will it work? No, it hasn't really worked. Um, no, I don't think so either. But at the end of the day, this is chasing money. It's all about revenue. It's all about profit. It's all about money. And then you have to ask the question: that's an extra load of games, player welfare. Now, the Rugby World Cup went on too long. I started to get a bit, I started to lose interest. Um, I started to lose interest in it, and I'm a passionate rugby fan, a passionate rugby league fan. I'll, you know, out of those two World Cups, I think I missed about 5 games between Rugby League World Cup and Rugby Union World Cup, and I felt the Rugby Union World Cup went on too long, um, which I think you could see the viewership figures actually going down as a tournament on the channel. I look at my data and there were lots going. The pool stages had higher viewership figures for the channel with the match reviews and content than the latter stages. Very noticeable looking at the average figures. And as soon as the tournament ended, I've lost some subscribers who are not interested in non-rugby union content. So as soon as that tournament ended and I posted some rugby league and football content, I lost subscribers. So I gained subscribers from pure rugby union content. And I always stated that I cover multiple sports. So I find it frustrating when, well, I think there should be a feedback option when you unsubscribe from a channel on YouTube. Why did you unsubscribe? What was the reason? I think there should be a feedback option for why you unsubscribe. And then that creator can get that feedback. Um, you know, because I'm trying to work out how I've lost subscribers. It's frustrating because I'm still creating content. So I don't know. This is probably where I've gained some subscribers now while I'm doing this live stream, but I'm trying to work out how I've lost subscribers. I generally am. Like, it's just frustrating, but I think there should be a feedback. What a 16-team Euros was quality. I, as I say, I don't mind the 2014 format because we get to see more players playing at the top level. But I do think potentially they could. It's either 16 or 32 is preferable, but we're now hearing that some of the North American major leagues might expand past 32 teams and go bigger, like 34, 36, 38, 40 team leagues, which is ridiculous. What, 6 groups of 4? So the group winners plus the 2 best runners up. There's potential there. There's potential there. I can see that being, decent. There's decent potential there. But then you've got 4 second-place teams that miss out. So Rugby World Cup, Rugby World Cup, Rugby World Cup, Rugby World Cup. speak English, you know. Takes too long to get to the point of the Rugby World Cup. Yeah, I felt the pool stages were actually more entertaining than the knockout stages a little bit. Some of the rugby played was better. The intensity level goes up when obviously it's straight knockouts, and of course that emotion goes up. But actually, I think teams looked a bit more relaxed in the pool stages. Um, but I do think it went on a week, maybe 2 weeks too long, and then yeah, um, I again, social media is a good indicator of what sports fans are thinking, and some of them it's still on. People were saying it's still going on. Is it not finished? Now, again, this is up. This is where World Rugby has to make a decision. Is expand the tournament the right idea? Is it the right idea? Because Romania just were hopeless. Namibia still can't get a win, and Chile, while it was their first tournament and therefore it's a learning experience for them as a test nation, I think gave it a go, but see where the development has reached and where it can go. Probably only rugby fans that unsubscribed. Yeah, probably. It happens. Um, oh look, there's a reason why the channel exists. Is because I'm a sports fan, and there's just some sports that I really passionately like, others that I will do content on, even if I'm not personally a fan of that particular sport. I've always stated this. Things like the NBA and Major League Baseball, for example. I've done content on. I don't like basketball. I don't like baseball, but I will casually watch a game, and I will, do content on said sport, insert sport here. Um, I do think that with where we're at as a channel, it is frustrating, and yeah, the view counts the last couple of days have been really, really good. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating not getting that feedback of where you could do better or evolve things a little bit. It doesn't help when the algorithm's against you a little bit as well. It doesn't help when you're not getting the algorithm promoting you as a content creator. You can pay to have your channel promoted. I have noticed that. So if I was to do a video tomorrow, let's say discussing the history of Mansfield Town, there you go. Did the Chesterfield video yesterday, Mansfield Town, and I can click promote, and I can pay for that to be promoted. Will that actually pay off? Will it actually gain me any subscribers and any extra viewers? It might push me up in the algorithm a little bit, but that's not doing it. That's cheating, is it not? Yeah, it is enjoyable when you see a new nation, make a World Cup or a European Championship or whatever the sport may be, and reach that level. It is refreshing. Portugal, obviously, they were last there in 2007. You can definitely see the development of them as a nation in that 16-year period. You can definitely see that how they have developed and improved and grown the player base and taken that next step as a rugby playing nation. Absolutely. And they've got a great sevens program. Like they built the basis of their full test side of their sevens program at both World Cups. They invested heavily in that. Same with Chile. They play a similar style. Sevens is how they built the basis of the game, and you can see with how they play the game that they're very willing to offload at many opportunities, support running, support lines. They play a seven style with 15 players, and they've worked on this system of playing for a very, very long time, and it's obviously paid off for them as a nation because they got back to a World Cup the first time in many years, and they performed really well. They should have beaten Georgia. If they'd beaten Georgia and beaten Fiji, we're having a different debate about the makeup of that pool. I mean, they gave Australia a really good game as well. We're having a completely different debate about, you know, the final standings in Australia's pool. I mean, Australia were just dreadful, absolutely dreadful. Um, and Rugby Australia gave Eddie Jones a 5-year contract. He's gone after 9 months, which means they're now looking for their third head coach in a year. So just let that sink in. They sacked David Rennie 9 months ago, bringing Eddie Jones, who's just been sacked by England. Within a couple of weeks of him being sacked by England, they bring him in, and then they give him a 5-year contract, and he's already gone. He's resigned, and then we hear the rumours of him in discussions with the Japanese Federation about going back to coach Japan and all this. Absolute sorry state of affairs. But Rugby Australia has been badly run as an organisation for a very, very long time. And we are seeing the results of that with the team declining, the game domestically not being in a very strong position. And they're now going through head coaches like I go through hot dinners, which is not, it's just not a great way to run the team. Will I cover the PDC World Championship darts? No, I don't. I've lost. Darts for me is a joke now. Yeah, probably not. Like, firstly, I'll be very, very busy with work at that time of year, because it's the festive period, and that's when we have a lot of work. We're very, very busy with my normal job, and secondly, I no darts for me is just lost all appeal. How many sports YouTubers do you know cover darts? It wouldn't. I don't think it would even benefit the channel, to be honest. Let alone me having enthusiasm for it. Um, I can't think of any sports YouTubers who cover darts. Not off the top of my head, anyway. I'm not that I've found any. There probably is. There probably is a darts sports YouTuber or someone who's that passionate about darts that they have a channel where they do content on it, but I haven't seen it. And trust me, a lot of sports channels come up in my recommended feed. I bet you as soon as I finish this stream and I just go back to doing my normal get my dinner ready and put a video on while I'm cooking my dinner, I bet you now that we mentioned darts, a darts video is going to come up. But for me, no, I've got no interest in darts anymore. I know there are those who very passionate, enjoy their darts, and that's, the atmosphere is obviously a big draw for them, and going with your mates and having a laugh. And I get that, but for me, it's not as enjoyable for me as what it was again. And the money's ruined it. Money's definitely ruined it for me. Um, Same with snooker a little bit. I feel that we are going down a slippery slope with all the betting companies, online gambling firms, and betting shop companies having big stakes in the sponsorship of players in tournaments. And what we're seeing with snooker with all the match fixing, that is deeply concerning. It's the same with all the gambling and suspensions in football. Tonali being the latest. Of course, we've had Ivan Toney. There's a couple of other Italian players, Ivan Toney and Sturridge and all that. We are definitely reaching a threshold and a moment, a crossroads, where we have to seriously consider things. Where we have to look at the role that sports betting companies and gambling firms in general, but sports betting, but gambling firms have with sports sponsorship and of individual players and of leagues, and sports, and competitions, because we are are seeing is not just football players in Europe getting suspended. We've now got NHL players getting suspended. We've got snooker players getting suspended, bans, lengthy bans. Some of them are life bans. We are now seeing a bigger issue, and I don't think the sporting authorities, especially in the US, are fully prepared for what is going to be unfolding. If Shane Pinto is just the tip of the iceberg, and I believe he is the tip of the iceberg, I think more players are breaching betting rules in the North American major leagues. More players definitely are. There's no hiding from it. And it's going to be interesting to see how in the US and Canada they evolve their rules and their guidance on gambling sponsorship. Because I do think that they're going down a slippery slope. They're not learning the lessons that in Europe we've had decades learning about. What less is more? It depends in what context. I would say I'm not against high, professional athletes getting paid a decent wedge to be a rugby league player, rugby union, ice hockey, football. I'm not against that. I'm not in, but what I do think we need more of is more free to wear coverage. That's what I think we need, more accessibility. We need more accessibility, which is why I don't like the next year's Super League TV deal, where Channel 4 loses the right to co-host, to be the co-broadcaster. I don't like that. I don't like. Well, less football games. I wouldn't say less is more. I would argue that the structures of international tournaments need to be looked at. I would argue getting rid of the Nations League format completely. But less is more. In some contexts, yes. I think in a sporting context, we need to have better distribution of funds. I think we need to have the money better distributed. I think we need to have better governance and a more transparent governance process, and more transparency when it comes to contracts, transfers, um, and if I won the Nations League, I wouldn't party over it. I wouldn't even have a cup of tea to it. I've never bought into the Nations League format. Never bought into it. Um, and a lot of the players on a lot of the countries haven't bought into it either. There seems to be a lot of, I don't know how to describe it, apathy towards the Nations League from players. There seems to be a lot of apathy because it's not like a UEFA or a CONMEBOL tournament where it's not like the Copa America or the Euros. It's not like a World Cup where you're basically saying this team is the best in the continent and the best in the world. It's not a sense of an individual player. You're the man of the match in the World Cup or a Euros or a Copa America final or a Gold Cup final if you're North American, for example. It doesn't have it, Nations League. It doesn't have the same ring to it that being a world champion or a European champion does. Kevin De Bruyne never looks happy though, and he's injury prone now, which says a lot. He wasn't. Yeah, I don't know if he was speaking out of frustration or he was generally going, "We don't need this format. We need to change the international calendar where it's just qualifiers, tournament, that's it. No friendlies, none of this Nations League crap, which impacts your seeding for qualifying groups." Um, the reason why the Nations League exists was the international friendlies as they were and how they were formatted with multiple substitutions, and not really being played at a high intensity, and fans not really like viewership figures on TV were crap. was they had lost their appeal. They were friendly. They weren't meaningful games. So instead of going, right, okay, we're going to have a qualifying tournament in the off season to replicate a World Cup or a Euros in the off season, which is generally what happens. They've scrapped the Confederations Cup. We'll go Euros, Copa America, Gold Cup, and then African Cup of Nations. African Cup of Nations is two, Gold Cup about the same. The African Cup of Nations, the quality is really bad. People go, the African football won. People go, why is Africa not won a World Cup? The quality is actually shocking. If you watch an African Cup of Nations, the quality is shocking. No, I would put Gold Cup above the Asian Cup and AFCON. Honestly, at least with the Gold Cup, it's a reasonable sized tournament where it's not massive and there's actually some good games. And the Caribbean and Central American nations really are bringing all the colour and the fun. The African Cup of Nations is a joke. The quality of pitches and stadiums is diabolical. The Asian Cup is fixed. We know the Asian Cup has got match fixing. And Oceania is New Zealand. New Zealand, because Australia doesn't take part anymore, so it's just New Zealand. No point. So I would go Euros, Copa America, Gold Cup, and African Cup of Nations in that order. The other two don't count because the Asian Cup we know is riddled with match fixing, and the Oceania Cup is New Zealand. Does New Zealand have to just New Zealand every time? But no, I think when a high-profile player like Kevin De Bruyne is basically saying the format as is crap. Now, if he was speaking out of pure frustration because he's feeling fatigued and he's got a niggling injury and the question was worded in a certain way is one thing, but multiple fans and players are going, this is just crap. This is not great, to be honest. And I've never bought into it. I don't understand why we just can't have qualifying tournament, following year tournament, qualifying tournament, in that cycle. We've got rid of the Confederations Cup, which is a massive blow because I used to love watching the Confederations Cup. I also did. And you could see when they got rid of it that the FIFA were basically saying we're going to have modern co-hosts now for future tournaments. I think they should have never got rid of the Confederations Cup. It was a fantastic little tournament. No, brilliant tournament, honestly. Absolutely brilliant tournament. And I don't think it should have been got rid of, but it is. But FIFA have taken the international game down one direction, and then UEFA and CONMEBOL and other regional continental federations below FIFA are taking it down another avenue, and then the club game's a joke. So there's a reason why I watch football less and less every day. Anyway, it's now gone 6 o'clock. I'm going to call that a live stream. Thank you very much for watching and all the questions. And I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon. Oh.